A judge mocked a black woman in his courtroom, assuming she was just another defendant. But when she reached into her pocket and revealed her badge, his entire demeanor changed. The truth about who she really was left everyone in shock. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more powerful stories like this one. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Let's see how far this story spreads. The Oakwood County Courthouse in Atlanta, Georgia, was known for one thing: Judge Raymond Whitaker. A strict, old-school judge with a reputation for being condescending, especially toward minorities. That morning, his courtroom was packed as he prepared to hear another round of cases. When the bailiff called the next name, all eyes turned toward the back of the room. "Danielle Carter, please step forward." A black woman in a sharp black blazer and slacks walked confidently toward the defendant's table. She had a calm, composed demeanor, but there was something different about her. Judge Whitaker glanced at her, then chuckled. "Oh boy," he muttered, shaking his head. "Let's get this over with." The entire courtroom snickered. But Danielle? She didn't even flinch. She knew something they didn't. Judge Whitaker leaned forward, smirking. "All right, Miss Carter," he said, flipping through a file. "Looks like you're here for— Wait, what is this?" He frowned. There was nothing written in the case file. No charges. No details. Just her name. "Bailiff," he snapped, "is this some kind of joke?" The bailiff shifted nervously. "No, Your Honor." She asked to be put on the docket. Whitaker's smirk returned. "Oh, I see," he said sarcastically. "Miss Carter, did you come here to waste the court's time?" Danielle tilted her head slightly. "No, Your Honor," she said, her voice calm and precise. Whitaker laughed. "Oh, you've got the attitude down, don't you?" he said mockingly. "Let me guess, you're about to cry discrimination. Tell me how unfair the system is, or—" Then, Danielle reached into her pocket. And what she pulled out made the entire courtroom go silent. A small leather wallet flipped open in Danielle's hands. Inside, a United States Secret Service badge. The color drained from Judge Whitaker's face. Danielle locked eyes with him. "Your Honor," she said, her voice turning ice-cold, "I am Special Agent Danielle Carter with the United States Secret Service. And I am not the one on trial today." The entire room gasped. Whitaker froze. The bailiff took a step back. Even the prosecutor looked stunned. No one saw this coming. Judge Whitaker cleared his throat, but his voice wavered. Agent Carter," he stammered. "What exactly is going on here?" Danielle folded her arms. "I'm here because of an ongoing federal investigation," she said. "And unfortunately, Your Honor, your courtroom is at the center of it." The murmurs in the room grew louder. Whitaker shifted uncomfortably. "This is highly unusual. What kind of investigation?" Danielle pulled out another document. "Corruption, bribery, wrongful convictions, and obstruction of justice." The judge's hands clenched the bench. This is outrageous," he sputtered. "You can't just barge in here and—" Danielle cut him off. "I can," she said. "And I did." Whitaker's breathing grew heavy. Because now, he knew he was in trouble. The public gallery, once laughing along with the judge, now watched in stunned silence. A few reporters whispered frantically, already texting their editors. A black woman had just walked into one of the most racially biased courtrooms in the city, and had flipped the entire power dynamic. Whitaker gritted his teeth. "This is ridiculous. I've been a judge for over 20 years. I have done nothing wrong." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" She motioned to the bailiff. "Bring him in." The doors swung open, and in walked a man in handcuffs. Judge Whitaker's face went pale. Because the man in cuffs was his longtime associate, Attorney Robert Langley. The same attorney who had won dozens of questionable cases in Whitaker's courtroom. Danielle turned back to the judge. "We've been tracking Langley's payments," she said. "Bribes, shady deals, all tied back to you." The entire courtroom erupted. Whitaker's jaw clenched. This is insane," he stammered. "You have no proof." Danielle slammed a folder onto the bench. "Actually, Your Honor," she said, grinning, "we have plenty." Whitaker's hands shook as he stared at the documents. Because deep down, he knew. This was the beginning of the end for him. Judge Whitaker had spent years holding power over others. But now, the tables had turned. As Danielle revealed more shocking evidence, his entire career and his freedom were on the line. Judge Whitaker stared at the evidence folder in front of him, his hands trembling. Inside were bank statements, wire transfers, and recorded conversations, all linking him to a massive bribery scheme. He looked up at Danielle, his face pale. This is fake," he muttered. Danielle tilted her head. "Would you like to tell that to the FBI?" The judge swallowed hard. Because he knew this wasn't fake. This was the truth finally catching up to him. The people in the courtroom, once laughing along with Judge Whitaker, now whispered nervously. The bailiff, once obedient to the judge, now kept his distance. Even the prosecutor, who had built cases under Whitaker for years, looked uneasy. Danielle held up another document. "This," she said, "is a list of cases you presided over where the defendants never had a chance. Where the outcomes were predetermined before they even set foot in this room." Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Danielle walked closer to the bench. "These aren't just names on paper, Your Honor. These are real people. People who lost years of their lives because of you." Whitaker gripped the bench, his knuckles turning white. This is outrageous," he stammered. Danielle smirked. "Outrageous? That's funny. Because I'm just getting started." Danielle turned to the bailiff. "Bring her in." The doors swung open, and in walked a woman, an older black woman with a determined look in her eyes. Whitaker's face drained of color. It was Patricia Simmons, a woman who had spent 10 years in prison for a crime she didn't commit, in his courtroom. The moment she stepped forward, the entire courtroom froze. Because now, it was personal. Patricia took the stand, her voice strong. "I was a schoolteacher," she said. "A good one. But one day, I got accused of stealing money from a school fundraiser." Her eyes locked onto Whitaker. "I was innocent," she said. "And you knew it." The judge shifted in his seat. I don't recall your case." Patricia slammed her hand on the witness stand. "Don't you dare," she snapped. The room went silent. "You never even looked at the evidence," she continued. "Because Robert Langley, your corrupt lawyer friend, was paid to make sure I lost." Whitaker opened his mouth, but no words came out. Because he knew. She was right. Danielle turned back to Whitaker. "Are you still going to pretend you're innocent?" she asked. The judge looked around the room. He saw the cameras, the reporters, the people who once respected him now watching him like a criminal. He saw Patricia Simmons, the woman whose life he ruined. And for the first time in his career, Judge Whitaker felt something he had never felt before. Fear. His breathing grew unsteady. Then, finally, he spoke. "Fine," he muttered. "You want the truth? You got it." The room went dead silent. And then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "I did it. All of it." Gasps erupted across the courtroom. Danielle nodded. "Now we're getting somewhere." Within minutes, federal agents entered the courtroom. One of them stepped forward. "Raymond Whitaker," the agent said, "you're under arrest for corruption, bribery, and obstruction of justice." The courtroom exploded into chaos. Whitaker tried to stand, but his legs buckled. The same bailiff who had once taken orders from him now placed him in handcuffs. Patricia watched, unblinking. For 10 years, this man had stolen her freedom. And now, justice had finally arrived. The next morning, the headlines were everywhere. Judge who mocked black woman in court, now facing prison himself. Secret Service agent exposes massive judicial corruption scandal. The fall of Raymond Whitaker, justice at last. People across the country celebrated. And for those who had suffered under Whitaker's rulings, it was the beginning of hope. A week later, Danielle sat in her office when her phone rang. It was Patricia Simmons. "I just wanted to say thank you," Patricia said softly. Danielle smiled. "You don't need to thank me, Ms. Simmons. This was long overdue." Patricia exhaled. "I just have one question." Danielle leaned back. "What's that?" Patricia's voice wavered. "How did you know?" That something was wrong with Whitaker. Danielle smiled. Because, Miss Simmons, she said, I make it my business to protect this country. And that includes protecting people like you. Patricia wiped a tear from her eye. You're one hell of a woman, Agent Carter. Danielle smirked. I try. Judge Whitaker had fallen, but Danielle Carter's job was far from over. What started as an investigation into one corrupt judge had uncovered something far worse. As she dug deeper, she realized the entire justice system was under threat. And this time, the people she was going after wouldn't go down without a fight. A week after Judge Whitaker's arrest, Danielle Carter sat in her Washington, D.C. office, reviewing new case files. Her phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. She hesitated before answering. Agent Carter. A distorted voice came through the line. You should have left this alone. Danielle's blood ran cold. Who is this? She demanded. The voice chuckled darkly. You think Whitaker was the only one? You have no idea how deep this goes. Click. The line went dead. Danielle exhaled slowly. Because now, she knew she had just scratched the surface. And someone, somewhere, was watching her. Danielle didn't waste time. She gathered her most trusted team at a secure location. Sitting across from her was Special Agent Ryan Torres, her longtime partner, and Senior Investigator Linda Grayson, a forensic accountant. Danielle placed a thick file on the table. This isn't just about Whitaker, she said. He was part of something bigger. Linda flipped through the documents, her eyes widening. These judges, they all ruled on cases involving the same law firms, the same corporations. Ryan leaned in. And they all had unusual financial activity. Danielle nodded. We're looking at a full-scale judicial corruption ring. Ryan let out a slow whistle. This could take down half the legal system, he said. Danielle's expression hardened. Then let's get to work. Their first target? Judge Henry Caldwell. A well-respected judge in New York, Caldwell had a reputation for always ruling in favor of big corporations. Danielle and Ryan arrived at his mansion late at night, planning to serve him a subpoena. But when they knocked, no one answered. Something felt off. Ryan tried the door. Unlocked. They stepped inside, weapons drawn. The house was too quiet. Then, Danielle saw it. A body slumped over the desk. Judge Caldwell was dead. Ryan swore under his breath. Damn it. We're too late. Danielle's jaw tightened. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone was cleaning up loose ends. And if they didn't move fast, they might be next. Back in D.C., Danielle met with an anonymous whistleblower. The man, a former federal prosecutor, looked terrified. You have no idea what you're up against, he whispered. Danielle leaned forward. Then tell me. The man swallowed hard. This goes beyond judges. Powerful people, politicians, billionaires, they control everything. Danielle narrowed her eyes. How do we take them down? The man hesitated. Then, slowly, he slid a USB drive across the table. This has everything, he whispered. Danielle grabbed it. Get out of town, she told him. Tonight. The man nodded and vanished into the night. Back at HQ, Danielle plugged in the USB drive. Files, emails, secret recordings, proof of a massive conspiracy. Ryan read through them, his face growing paler. This isn't just bribery, he muttered. They've been fixing cases, silencing witnesses, even blackmailing senators. Danielle's hands clenched into fists. This isn't corruption, she said. This is organized crime. And now, she had the evidence to expose it. The next morning, Danielle walked outside her apartment, and instantly felt it. Something was wrong. She turned just in time to see a black SUV speeding toward her. Her instincts kicked in. She dove behind a parked car as the SUV screeched past. A gunshot rang out. The bullet barely missed her. Ryan came running. Carter, are you hit? Danielle stood up, dusting herself off. No, she said. But she wasn't shaken. She was angry. All right, she muttered. They want to play dirty? Let's play. Ryan grinned. Now we're talking. That night, Danielle made her boldest move yet. She sent the entire case file to the press. Within hours, the story exploded. Secret Service agent uncovers massive judicial corruption ring. Powerful judges, politicians implicated in scandal of the century. Agent Danielle Carter refuses to back down, now a target herself. The American people demanded justice. And for the first time, the conspirators were on the run. But the fight wasn't over. Late that night, Danielle received one final call. It was the same distorted voice from before. "You think this is over?" the voice sneered. Danielle smirked. "No," she said. "But you are." She hung up. Because now it was her turn to strike. Danielle Carter had done the impossible. She exposed one of the biggest corruption scandals in U.S. history. But the people she was going after weren't just going to accept defeat. Now, they had one goal: silence her. And they would stop at nothing to make sure she never spoke again. Danielle sat in a secure FBI safehouse, reviewing the latest developments in the case. Her phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message. She opened it, and her blood ran cold. A single line of text read, "You should have walked away." Attached was a photo of her apartment, taken that morning. Ryan, who had been watching over her shoulder, tensed. "They know where you live," he muttered. Danielle's jaw tightened. "Then it's time to end this." Ryan nodded. "What's the plan?" Danielle turned to him, her eyes like steel. "We take the fight to them." The next day, Danielle met with Attorney General Rebecca Lawson in a heavily guarded government office. Lawson, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, studied the case files with a grim expression. "This is enough to take down some of the most powerful figures in the country," she said. Danielle nodded. "Then let's move." Lawson exhaled. "We have to be careful, Agent Carter. These people, they don't play fair." Danielle smirked. "Neither do I." Lawson slid a folder across the table. "This is a warrant for the arrest of Senator Charles Rutledge," she said. "He's one of the masterminds behind this operation." Danielle took the folder and stood. "Then let's go get him." That evening, federal agents swarmed a private estate in Virginia. Inside, Senator Charles Rutledge, one of the most powerful men in Washington, was hosting a lavish party. He was laughing with corporate executives when suddenly, boom, the front doors were kicked open. FBI. Hands in the air. The entire party erupted into chaos. Rutledge turned, his face twisting in shock. "What the hell is this?" he roared. Danielle stepped forward. "This," she said, flashing her badge, "is justice." Before Rutledge could say another word, agents cuffed him and dragged him out in front of dozens of cameras. By the next morning, his mugshot was on every news channel in America. Once Rutledge was arrested, the dominoes fell. More judges. More politicians. More corporate leaders. One by one, they were brought down. The corruption ring that had controlled the justice system for decades? Completely dismantled. The American people celebrated. Danielle, however, knew it wasn't over yet. Because there was one man left. And he was the most dangerous of them all. The mastermind behind everything? Billionaire media mogul Victor Langston. A man with influence over politicians, law enforcement, and the press. He had funded the entire operation, ensuring corrupt judges and politicians stayed in power. And now, Danielle was coming for him. She and Ryan stormed into his penthouse, flanked by federal agents. Langston, a cold, calculating man in his 60s, simply smirked from behind his desk. "You think you've won, Agent Carter," he said, sipping his whiskey. Danielle glared at him. "No. But I think you've lost." She threw down a stack of evidence. Emails. Financial records. Wire transfers. Langston's face darkened. For the first time, he looked nervous. Danielle leaned in. "You bribed judges. You blackmailed senators. You ruined innocent lives," she said. Langston scoffed. "And yet, here I am, sitting in my penthouse. Untouchable." Danielle smiled. "Not anymore." She nodded to an agent, who played a recorded conversation over a speaker. It was Langston himself, ordering a hit on a federal witness. His own voice had just sentenced him. Langston's smirk disappeared. Seconds later, Agents tackled him to the ground and cuffed him. Danielle watched as they dragged him out, his legacy crumbling. And with that, the final piece of the conspiracy fell. By morning, the media was on fire. Justice served, the fall of America's most corrupt officials. Agent Danielle Carter, the woman who took down a corrupt empire. No one is above the law. A message for the future. People across the country celebrated. Innocent lives were exonerated. For the first time in decades, people trusted the system again. And it was all because of one woman who refused to back down. A month later, Danielle sat in a cafe, finally enjoying some peace. Ryan slid into the seat across from her. "You finally did it," he said, grinning. Danielle smirked. "We did it." Ryan chuckled. "So, what now?" Danielle sipped her coffee. "Well," she said, "I was thinking I might take a vacation." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You taking time off?" Danielle laughed. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it. A new case file. She sighed, shaking her head. "Maybe next time." Ryan grinned. "Let's go." Danielle stood, badge in hand. Because her work, it was never really over. This story proves that the truth always comes out, no matter how powerful the people trying to hide it. If you believe in standing up for what's right, hit like, subscribe, and share this story. And tell us in the comments, what would you do if you uncovered corruption?